This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, Michael J. Facci. Facci, the news keeps coming every single day. It feels like we're getting lots and lots of trades, and the Charlotte Hornets are cleaning house, it looks like.
They are. And first I knew that there would be a move that followed their first move. This now feels like there's got to be a move that follows this move.
Yep.
But I agree with it. The Charlotte Hornets, out with the old so-called regime, I do feel like you needed to kind of swap out a bit of that locker room. I've always said before when I'd, Kyle on the other day, that if LaMelo Ball is your franchise guy, that sets the tone for your team. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, with them, it's like if you want to move on and move forward, you got to do it without them. And I feel like they have a nice young core they could build around. They have, in terms of assets like picks, it might be the biggest treasure chest of all in terms of they own all of their picks and more. So I like what the Charlotte Hornets are doing, but yeah, short term, maybe they took a step back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because as much as people don't like a Miles Bridges, he was a decent player for them, a starter for them in the front court, and that is why the Phoenix Suns have traded for him, and I think they actually saved some salary by doing this trade.
They did.
So it was a interesting move, a cost-saving move by them. You can say what you want about Miles Bridges, whether you like him or not, whether you think he should be in the league or not because of his off-court incidents or whatnot, but I don't know. I think the Hornets are in a better spot today than they were.
I do.
Just a couple of days ago. Getting rid of LaMelo and Miles Bridges just kind of feels like the dead weight of that team is officially behind them. And sometimes you got to cut your losses, and I think that's what they did. They clearly were never going to be anything more than a play-in team with those two as like the 1-2 on your roster. Now, you might say Miles Bridges was not really the number 2, but he was the second longest tenured, if not the longest tenured. So he actually might have been there longer than LaMelo. So
2018 draft. Actually,
yeah,
he was the last player from the 2018 draft.
That's right.
Still with their team. So
I saw that. That's
kind of wouldn't expect that, given his history. But loyalty or, long tenured players in this league is not something you come across.
That is pretty wild to think about for like nobody to be with their team still. But all I can say is the Suns, they just continue to make head-scratching move time and time again. I don't know what they're doing, but the Hornets, they're going to be interesting. They might actually have taken 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward here in the future.
So.
I don't know what their lineup's going to look like, but, when you acquire Naj Reid in the trade, now you've got him as your starting power forward. They've got depth. They just got a point guard and a power forward that they just drafted, so I think it was a little bit easier to cut ties with them. And so now, I think as the Pacers look at what they can do, it's kind of interesting because the way the league is shaping up right now, there's a lot of teams that look like they've got these loaded rosters. You're not sure how they're going to be able to keep everybody. Memphis and Milwaukee are the two that I really think about for the rosters that they've kind of put together with all these draft picks and things like that. So just keeping an eye on that. But we heard from Chad Buchanan last week after the Pacers drafted Braden Smith, and I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of go through and maybe highlight some of the things he said and kind of get your perspective on how you interpreted what he said to the media. So I don't know where you want to start, but I thought there was some good stuff there.
Yeah, there was some good stuff. Let's start with some of the positives, okay? Talking about Braden Smith. Really talking that he loved the intangibles that he brings to the table, in specific, his will to win, the way that he leads a team, the way that he's able to get those around him shots, and most importantly, is high basketball IQ. So it is extremely high. So Chad wanted to be very much known that hey, don't have that be a story of that I know his family. This was not, you didn't pick him just because he has family ties or anything like that. You picked him because of the intangibles that he brings to the game on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a lazy analysis that people were just like, oh, his son played with him at Westfield at one point. That's why they're picking him. It's like, guys, you do realize that Chad Buchanan is not the only one that has a say in how the Pacers go about picking their players. Ownership has a say. Pritchard is the final decision maker for the Pacers front office. Buchanan has a voice. Ted Wu has a voice. Rick Carlisle has a voice. And then they have a whole entire scouting team. This is not just a Chad Buchanan Nepo hire. I just thought it was one of the dumbest, laziest narratives I've seen in a while. And whether you like Braden Smith or not, I don't really care about that because he's on a 2-way contract. He's going to have to prove himself to really belong in the NBA. But I think it makes a lot of sense what he had to say. And I thought Chad also was really smart about how he kind of talked about how they needed point guard depth. And with Tyrese coming back healthy, with Nembhard, with McConnell, you don't really need somebody on your standard contract as that, quote unquote emergency point guard. He's kind of their fourth point guard right now on the depth chart. He can play in 50 of the 82 games on a two-way deal. We know that that's something the Pacers will utilize over time because it's going to happen with McConnell's injury history, with Nembhard's injury history, and with Tyrese's injury history. There's going to be opportunities for him to get time. But I think the one thing I actually appreciated the most from this conversation, it was one of the later questions Chad got asked. And a lot of people are making the comparative. We did it a little bit to TJ McConnell and how he can do that. But what he said is, we need Braden to realize he's not playing 40 minutes a game now anymore, and that when he's on the court, it's going to be for 12 to 14 minutes. So how can he get to the point where he exerts himself and gives it 110% for those 14 minutes like you would do in a 40-minute game? Basically, because Braden would tell them, like, yeah, I kind of held back some defensively because I knew I had to play 40 minutes a game, so I'm trying to, conserve my energy and things like that. I thought it was just really fascinating to hear them kind of, or at least hear Chad talk about, yeah, we want to challenge him to, make that 40-minute game you play 2 7-minute stints, basically, for 14 minutes, and go out there and do what TJ does, because TJ kind of had to learn how to do that as well. And what makes TJ such a good backup point guard is how many minutes he can actually play, but when he's out there, you're getting 110% balls to the wall, and that's what you got to see from Braden Smith.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that Chad even mentioned that they had somewhat of a existing relationship, so it feels like this will be good. McConnell understands the assignment. Hey, it's not that it's, hey, this is your responsibility, but help bring him along. Help bring him along. Obviously, TJ McConnell is going to be looked at as the measuring stick of maybe of what Braden Smith could become one day. But Chad was also honest, said that with this move, they wanted to get a two-way player to address point guard depth. They wanted to create some roster and cap flexibility. That's definitely what this did. Obviously, by trading Cam Jones for Braden Smith, Indiana opens up a standard roster spot, clears just over $2 million in the process. So it felt like, to an extent, in classic terms of Pacer basketball, it was, hey, what's a financially sound move that we can make that also makes sense from a basketball standpoint? I think they were able to address a few different, check a few different boxes with this, trade and draft selection. So, I think it was it was always good to hear from Chad, but I think that from the Braden Smith standpoint, he's not saying that this guy is going to hit the ground running from day one and be, playing big minutes. He's tempered expectations, and I think being on a two-way contract, you can bring someone along slowly, like you said, play up to 50 games, but also it's pretty rare to have, outside of Quentin Jackson, two-way players that are with you for multiple years, and it feels like that could be the case here. Maybe one day he gets, converted to a standard. Who knows? But for right now, he's in a good spot where Indiana can bring him along slowly.
Yeah, and I will just say this too, because I was going to bring this up earlier when you were talking about why the Pacers drafted him. The Indiana Pacers were not the only team interested in getting Braden Smith. Braden Smith actually said this in an interview with Dustin Dopirak and some of the media on Saturday while he was at Tyrese Halliburton's camp. He said, yeah, he knew that it was the Pacers once the Bulls pick was announced because they had let him know, but it was between the Bucks, the Lakers, and the Pacers for teams
Always
that
the
were
Lakers.
calling
They're
up
always
to
out there.
try and get him. So clearly there was teams that liked his play. And yeah, I mean, the fact that he's going on a two-way deal is great. And look, I think some people kind of forget this whole entire thing, but or this part of being on a two-way deal, you can get converted into a standard contract. So the Pacers currently have 2 roster spots open, right? And depending on what they do, if they bring in somebody that's really close to getting to that first apron threshold, right? They could, if they wanted to, they could bring Braden Smith on and sign him to that rookie minimum contract, which is about $1.35 million this year, if they want to get 15 people on the roster and then sign somebody else to a two-way deal. So not saying they should do that or they have to do that. They can just keep it at 14. They don't have to have a full 15-man roster. That is kind of how they've operated normally, though, is we want to get as many players as we can in here. And another thing, too, you can't have up to 21 players on your roster heading into training camp. So you can make your cuts by the start of the season. It's not that big of a deal if you have more players on these non-guaranteed contracts, similar to Micah Potter. But I just kind of think it makes sense to just be able to lock in Braden Smith on a two-way deal because we got to talk about what Chad Buchanan said here about free agency because once again, didn't really address the point guard spot, right? Like he basically said, I think we're okay at point guard now with Braden being drafted, but we got to look at the wing spot and we got to look at center probably. So where do you want to start with that? Because I think those are both pretty interesting.
One of the quotes that really stood out to me was the priority is to add depth to
Yep.
this team. When that word came, it's not that it hit me hard, like, "Ah," but it was like, I know what that means. And when you say depth, that means you're not making a splash. Chad was very adamant in saying that this is the quote: "If it's the right player and the right move for the team, that we'll do it. But we don't want to disrupt this team." Mention how they haven't seen this team in specific zoo, with this group. So I've heard Chad say that before, we'll be aggressive if there's the right player out there. Like, sure, classic Pacer, basketball means that it's like, hey, we're going to take our time with it. So I felt like for those of you really hoping for like a Trey Murphy the third or something big, this probably squashed your dreams just a little bit because I feel like the word depth to me felt like round out the roster. So there was that, and then there was definitely the kind of emphasizing that the center position is definitely something they're going to be looking at.
Okay, so when we talk about the wing spot, right? Like I think it's interesting because they've said wing multiple times. They haven't said, "Oh, we want to look at our two guard spot."
Mhm.
They say we want to look at the wing spot, which to me that's mostly like a three that can maybe play the two and can play the four, but it's mostly the three spot. And right now, the only wings that I see on the roster are Aaron Nesmith.
Yes.
You can play Ben Shepherd at the wing. Jarris Walker's a wing, and Johnny
Mhm.
Furphy's a wing. I don't really think Siakam's a wing. I think he's more of a
No,
forward.
exactly.
So you've got four wings. Two of them are restricted free agents after this season, and Johnny Furphy's coming back from this torn right ACL that he's rehabbing from. Looks like he's doing better. He's on the court, getting some
Sounded
work in.
like
So we'll see when he's ready to play. I would not expect him to be ready to play by the start of the season, but at least getting back on the court and getting some rehab in. But if that's kind of your wing depth, I get it. But are we looking more at like what do you think they're thinking? More like we got to find someone that can replace Jarris in that
I
second
don't
unit
know.
or Shep, or is it more like we want to fill Kobe Brown's void that he's leaving?
I hope it's not the latter because I'm like now like don't tell me what that means is that by trading Cam Jones, you created just enough space to be able to sign a minimum player just to be a hair below the luxury tax. Like, please
It's a
tell me
thought.
that is not the case. I don't want to hear that. So it was definitely a little bit like, same old Pacers of just like, you really think they're going to push the chips in, and then they find a way to maybe not be a luxury tax team. We know things could definitely change, but it definitely didn't feel like a vote of confidence for Jarris. When talking about Jarris and Ben in specific, says optimistic about both, believe in both of those guys, and want to continue to see their growth and how that fits in with this team moving forward. So there was not this massive vote of confidence. So I do think that, yeah, Chad's right. You do need to address the depth at the wing because right now there really isn't any of it. So if something was to happen to Aaron Nesmith, you're definitely worried at that point. So I feel like trying to replace Kobe Brown, who while he did play well, that was not in meaningful games.
Mm.
So I do feel like they definitely need more, off the bench. But in my opinion, like you need more than just a minimum type of player. And like, sure, could someone take a discount to be a minimum player? Yeah, I guess. But like, it definitely lowers like how excited you would be about how much of an impact that player should have.
When we talk about the wing spot, like I went through like the players I view as wings on this team, but do you think the Pacers, maybe Chad Buchanan, when he was saying wings, he means more of like in that 2-3 spot that can maybe play the guard some too, like not point guard, but like off guard. Like
Yes.
if we're looking more at like a shooting guard that's like 6'4".
Maybe. I mean, I do feel like at the four, there's definitely options between like a Siakam and Obi, and
Well, I'm talking
obviously,
about the two. I'm talking about
yeah, I know. So I'm just
okay.
saying, like in terms of the four, like I feel like they're pretty decent there. Like
And
I think
Burke
that
and Walker can play the 4 too if
I
you
know
need to,
exactly.
and even Potter really.
Yeah, I mean, Jarris was brought into this league. You thought he'd be a four. So I do feel like they're a little bit better at that spot than they are at like a true wing, 2-3 type of spot. So Yeah, I mean, they could use some help there, and that's probably where there's a little bit more players to go around that I think maybe could be around in free agency. But I look at this team and this bench, it's just not enough
Yeah.
right now. They do, of course, they need to add to the depth, but like depth to me, just it's not the sexiest overconfidence type of word that makes it seem like Indiana's really looking to add to this team. It looks like they're more looking to like fill out this team. And that's the difference.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that they should try and bring in someone that is actually worthy of playing with that second unit and then
Yes,
make it a
absolutely.
competition, because I think that just handing Shepard and Walker
Not a good idea.
roles like that, it's not going to push them to the next
Nope.
level. Especially without Furphy being available to play. Like,
There's no
who's
one
your
breathing down
biggest?
your neck. I mean,
Yeah,
look what happened. It may be a sore subject for a lot of people, but like, look what happened to Anthony Richardson when Daniel Jones came in. I felt like right then and there, it was like, all right, this is sink or swim. And like Daniel Jones was that veteran who had started a lot more games, that came in there, won the job, and that was it. If you were to just hand Anthony Richardson the job, I don't think he would have just gotten a lot better and just kind of taken off. So like for Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker heading into being, extension eligible, they need to be tested. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you can't just hand them the job because we don't even know what would be worthy of paying them in terms of on the open market.
yeah. I think the Pacers are going to be a little bit more aggressive to try and find more
I hope.
bench depth versus, hey, we're gonna look for a third string depth, because that to me
Yeah,
is not bench depth. That's
uh,
just like,
that's filling out the roster. That's just
yeah,
like
that's stuff you can do in August. You know what I
I
mean?
agree. I agree with that.
So, what I will say is not like worrisome, but if you've read any of these intel pieces by Michael Scotto, and he's got
Yes.
like probably 40 players listed in there with like 8 teams, and then you go read like Mark Stein and Jake Fisher stuff over on their Substack, and you read stuff on Yahoo. Every team is almost mentioned, and like the only team you never hear mentioned is the Pacers. Like,
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Like we are
like
not being linked to anybody right now.
nobody.
And like the Pacers were linked to Trey Murphy at one point. But and like maybe even started to hear a little bit of rumblings of potentially like a Herb Jones type of situation. I feel like they just love their core seven too much to the point where teams are like, all right, well, then we're not making a deal. Like at that point, like is Jarris really the only player that could be available of any interest? I mean, we're not even really hearing reports that Jarris is being offered to anybody. So I just feel like what assets are the Pacers even willing to part with at this time?
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, why are they being so quiet? Like it feels like as of recent, we've heard them be a little bit more linked into like stuff that's out there publicly.
Yeah.
And the fact that they haven't really been involved makes me wonder like how serious they are about this whole contingency plan. Because to me, it's like you're trying to sell the fan base that you're trying to win a championship and that
Yeah,
you're willing to go into the tax for the right player. And if you play it cheap and play it safe, you're going to lose a lot of trust in this fan base that you've already
I agree.
established for the past 4 years now since I got Halliburton. I mean, really, when they traded for Halliburton, everything just kind of changed. And I think everybody just like was all in on this front office. But with the Zubac trade going the way that it did, where you trade Mathurin and then you lose the fifth overall pick, there's already kind of some egg on their face a little bit.
There is.
And they're trying to backtrack and like, oh, we're really good. Like Big Zoo's a great pickup. Like you could honestly say like, okay, they did a little pre agency. They got Zubats in February
Sure.
versus in
Fair.
June. Okay, that's great. Or July, great. That's a good move. You got ahead of that.
It is.
You're getting a healthy Halliburton back. That's another awesome and incredible piece that you can't really, find a better player on the market than that. But that doesn't mean that your roster is at the same level of some of these other teams potentially, because you did lose key pieces of your last title team. And
Absolutely.
you can't ignore that and just say, well, we can replace Mathurin's bench production that was only good for every 3 games with Ben Shepherd and Jarris Walker. No, you can't. As much as Mathurin was a little bit of a head case and a little bit of a hot and cold type of player, when he was hot, that would be a game-changing type of player.
Yes.
So, and he just made defenses on the other team have to worry about him, which made opportunities for other players better. So I personally just think like if they want to sit on their hands and play it safe and not make a significant move, okay, like I'll sit there and I'll understand your logic, but I will disagree with it.
I know you can't be throwing around the word contingency plan and then we added a two-way player, and we're gonna find a way to replace Kobe Brown. Like, it just can't be like, that's the contingency plan. So, I felt like a contingency plan is, something where it's like, if you were gonna have, like, a party outdoors and it's gonna rain, it's gonna thunder, and now you're like, "All right, you know what?" You're calling up, like, certain buildings to be like, "All right, we're gonna move this inside." Like, the show must go on. Right now, it feels like you're trying to sell this in a way that's just like, we're gonna be we're gonna get better from within. We're getting Halliburton back, and we think that we have a good core that play together. We haven't even seen Zubats yet. Okay, sure, yes, that's definitely worthy of something, but like, the contingency plan of when you've lost the what ended up being the fifth overall pick, that could have been someone that could have made a massive impact. Like, if the Pacers were picking in the top four, you immediately have, arguably your sixth man
You
or
have your
just the
wing.
future. Yeah, exactly. You absolutely have. If you're talking about like a Caleb Wilson, oh man, at that
Yeah.
point, you're like, the Pacers are off and running. But Chad
Davis
was
is gone
also,
if they get Caleb Wilson.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No doubt about it. When he was talking about Halliburton, he was saying, Chad, that is, was basically saying it's not gonna be instantly, and we all knew that. He said there's gonna be some ups and downs, the experience not being in the playoffs, it's in other team, quote, "other teams having success that we've had success against." We definitely know who that's about, has motivated him. I felt like it was like, yeah, those are all the right things to say, like, to try and temper the expectations, but I also feel like if that is the case and Indiana could be off to a little bit of a slower start, maybe you definitely need a little bit more of a scoring punch or a little bit more of a oomph. When you talk about Benedict Mathurin, like, Mathurin was getting to the free throw line in a way that no other pacer could. Mathurin was able to have games where he could score 20 or more points, and you're not saying, all right, well, that's kind of a fluke or inconsistent. He could do that any night, any possible night. He could go off for 20 to 30 points. Right now, the Pacers don't have that off the bench. Like, if Obi Toppin was to score 30 points, he's probably only going to do that a couple of times in the entire year. TJ McConnell, you're not going to get that out of McConnell. You're not going to get that out of Shet. You're not going to get that out of Jarris Walker. So whoever is going to fill that void is not on this roster right now. Like, they need more. And if they're going to nickel and dime and look for a player that is going to be able to get slid in there for just below about $2.5 million or below $3 million, it's just not going to get the job done.
No, it's not. And we're gonna get on our next episode we're doing for tomorrow. We're gonna touch on some players we'd like to see them go out and get. We've already done some of that already, but I think this kind of gives us a little bit of a clear path because we've seen some moves made. We kind of know what players maybe that we had originally thought of could be available, could not be available. So we're in a different spot now just because we kind of have some clarity on some names. Maybe some new names have popped up. I'm not sure what you have down, but I just get to the point where I'm just like, how serious is this team about winning? Because
I'm
it
worried.
does
I'm a
feel
little bit
like
worried.
it,
Yeah.
it, it does feel like that as much as they want to win, they're always going to be worried about the tax. And it's just like same old cheap Pacers. And I don't want to be like that where I'm
No.
just like, this is a cheap team. But like when you constantly just see them making moves to nickel and dime to get themselves under the tax all the time,
Yep.
it's like, this is a 2-year window you're talking about, and you like your core 7, but your backup point guard is going to be 35 at the end of this season. Like, you got to start thinking like, what type of moves could we make to kind of roll this over into the next era of Pacers basketball once TJ gets a little bit older, and how much can you really bank on Tyrese staying healthy for the next decade and not going through these ups and downs of injuries, and how do you kind of alleviate some of that pressure? And so I just think that, yeah, I mean, it's a good team, and sure, they made the finals 2 years ago, but like, you got to look around the rest of the rest of the Eastern Conference. Like, teams are getting better. They're the Knicks look a lot better with Mike Brown and some of the moves they made. Now they're going to look a little different without some of the players that they might lose in free agency, but the Heat clearly got better by adding Giannis, and you can kind of dismiss it all you want, but you can't dismiss probably the best player in the league going somewhere else with another really good player that's a top 10 player in Bam Adebayo in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics are going to look different with Jaylen Brown on the move, but like, what is the return that they get for him, and how are they able to kind of like add depth to their roster with by trading a guy that wants to be a number one somewhere else? So look, I'm not saying the Pacers aren't in a good spot. I think they still are, but I do think that if you're just like thinking we can walk back with this same group and win it all, like, the Western Conference is really tough, and they're a couple pieces away to me from really being a top competitor. And my biggest fear is that we get complacent and we become nickel and diming again versus, hey, let's go out there and get as close to the first apron as possible and be a tax-paying team for the first time in 25 years.
I know the Nuggets got it done, but the Nuggets were kind of the team that kind of cheaped out afterwards. Like they won their title and they started to. You lost KCP, you lost Bruce Brown. Eventually, you had to trade Michael Porter Jr. Like there was a couple bad decisions in there, but like, you saw that team break off, and now they are a team that is kind of floating in the wind right now, trying to say like, all right, well, we want to be competitive, but we're not going to really like go for it. Like they struck out trading for Cam Johnson, and now they might even look to move him. So there's a lot of teams that make it to an NBA Finals or win an NBA Finals, and then they don't make it back. And I do feel like those teams didn't have a catastrophic injury happen to their top player just financially. They said, you know what? Even the Bucks, like the Bucks were a team that was like, you know what? They won a ring, and then you started to see, okay, by goes Drew Holiday and this, and little by little, couple bad moves here and there. So I think for the Pacers, you have the talent on this roster to be able to say, like, man, we got to be. If we're not aggressive now, when are we aggressive? And like I've said before, we've talked about this historically. The Pacers have been more aggressive at the trade deadline. Maybe they have something about them, this front office, where they really want to see these teams play together for X amount. I mean, we've had Chad on, and I remember him saying, let's just get to January and see how this team looks. And like maybe that is the mindset of the team
Yeah.
to say, like, we really want to see like 40-ish games with this group before we then like have like a clear answer. And they also are not hesitant to move someone who's going to be headed towards free agency. And
Yeah.
maybe that is when they elect to say, all right, you know what? Jarris Walker, we've kicked the can down. That's pretty much as far as we can kick it. Maybe that's the time to make a trade. And I think you would imagine Jarris probably has more value than Shep at the trade deadline, depending on how the season plays out. Maybe that's kind of like that move in the back pocket.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like, you think about adding a player in free agency that can make about $10 to $12 million potentially. You include them with Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd in a trade. Now you can go out there and get you a quality eighth person versus, maybe you couldn't get that deal done if that team is not willing to make a move right now. And I'm looking at Trey Murphy III just specifically. You could potentially get that done with 3 players for 1 and all your picks. But like I put this out on Twitter yesterday because Caitlin Cooper kind of ran through all of the picks that have re-signed here with Indiana since like 2015, and it's like really, really bad. It's like Edmund Sumner, Isaiah Jackson, Andrew Nembhard, and Turner are the only ones that have re-signed with the Pacers after their original rookie contracts expired. And I said, if you think about Pritchard's tenure, like he was assistant GM with Larry Bird when they took Miles Turner, but like, that was still Larry Bird's call. And from what I know, I'm pretty sure Larry Bird was very much involved in the TJ Leaf pick, which was on Pritchard's name, but still, you just throw that on Pritchard just for, he was the GM at the time or the president at the time. So from 2018 to now, I personally feel like the only home run pick they've had is Andrew Nembhard. And so
I agree.
And that's an 8-year span. And like, yeah, we like Mathurin, but like, was it a home run pick? No, because he was a home 6 overall pick.
Yes.
And in a redraft, he is not the 6th pick. In a redraft, Nembhard gets drafted higher than him. So
yes.
So let me just ask you this, because I threw this out on Twitter. I'm not trying to say this in a negative thing, because drafting is very hard. I mean, we know that it's very random, and unless you get lucky like San Antonio, where you're getting Wemby and then Castle and then Harper, like, it's just very difficult to do. We've seen it over and over and over again. Unless you're getting like top 4 picks, top 3 picks,
it's what it's really
very hard
is.
to build.
Anything outside of top 3 is it gets.
Castle was 4, but he positioned himself to go there on purpose, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'll just say top 4 because that's kind of what you want with the new lottery or like the old lottery before it became new this upcoming season. But anyway, my whole thing is like, should the Pacers really want to hold on to these picks because of what they could potentially trade for? Or if there's a player out there, for example, let's just put it out there, Trey Murphy III, and they have 3 first-round picks they can trade plus swaps, wouldn't it be smart to kind of just trade those for a proven commodity?
I think so, because when you talk about like, hey, like Turner, like, yeah, definitely pick 11, great pick. Never an all-star though, So it's like, hey, good pick because you got a lot of years out of him and things like that. And obviously he started a lot of games. Then you look at like Nembhard, like Nembhard is definitely still on the, up and coming. Maybe if he I don't know, was like the lead guy. Maybe he could end up being like a fringe all-star, but like most of the time when you're trading a couple of picks for someone, it tends to be an all-star that
Yep.
you're trading for. It tends to be someone who definitely is proven. So yeah, I'm not like holding on to these picks for dear life. I worry when it's 3 firsts and maybe like another swap. I think at that point it's like, ooh, so like if this move doesn't work out, like there is no next move. Like this is it. So if you're gonna pony up the picks, it's gotta be for someone who's definitely established. I think I have no problem if it's like two first round picks, or in this situation for Siakam, like we knew what those picks would really sort of be like, and
Yeah.
those were not good picks.
Mhm.
So I think in that instance, I was like, absolutely do that. You do that move 10 out of 10 times. Right now, the Pacers are in a little bit of that 2+ years from now, like, you don't know what to expect with those picks. So that's where it gets a tiny bit scary. But if you have the talent on the roster and you tell yourself you're going to remain competitive, then you really shouldn't have to worry about the picks.
Well, and I'm just saying, like, if you think about this too, like their draft track record does not make you feel good about keeping those picks.
It doesn't.
It's like, oh, we wouldn't trade potentially an Aaron Holiday and a Goga Batadze for a Trey
Literally.
Murphy the third because a 2033 pick looks that good on paper. It's like the mystique of what a pick could be versus
Of
what it
course.
actually is always more valuable, and that's why I think like look at what the Hornets are doing. Like they're like just taking all of these picks and they're banking on like Minnesota not being good in 2033 and Phoenix not being good in 2033, whatever.
Yep.
Like they're stockpiling picks, hoping that players kind of fade out or teams kind of fade out. But it's like I was reading Sam Vecini's recent article that he put a whole entire 2027 NBA mock draft out, and he was like, "This might be the worst second round that I can remember in a long time for draft picks." He said, "I literally think teams will be trying to get rid of their 2027 second round picks because of how not deep, but shallow this class is, right?" Like, I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. So it's like with NIL becoming such a big thing, like the second round almost becomes
True.
not that important
No.
unless you're really trying to get like these veteran type players on your team, like a Braden Smith, right? Because he can't go back to college. So it's like,
There was a lot of seniors drafted this year, and I think it
oh
was
yeah,
because a lot of the younger guys stayed in college and
yep.
cashed in. A lot of those guys did make $1 million, maybe $2 million or more. So yeah,
Look at
it's
Braylon Mullins. Like Braylon Mullins was like in the 20s for projections, and then like
yep.
had kind of like moved up to the late lottery before like once UConn lost the championship to Michigan, and his mock draft now he's number 4.
Wow. Wow.
So that
Yeah.
just shows you like how far this class is compared to last year's. Then you think about Boozer, like Caden Boozer, like he's gonna probably be a top 5 pick,
I have
and
no idea what to expect on him. So we'll see.
I'm just throwing it out there
Yeah.
like this is how like weak draft classes are getting.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's going to continue to get weaker and weaker as college basketball gets
Probably.
more and more money. So
It's a
it's like,
valid
what is
point.
the value of these picks? Like, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but it's like these picks are just so like, unless you're getting like a lottery top 5 pick, top 10 pick, it really doesn't matter. And the Pacers probably don't plan on being there anytime soon
I
with
don't think so.
Halliburton, who
Yep.
once again reiterated in an interview that he wants to be here for the rest of his career.
Great.
And if
I love
he's
it.
here, you're trying to win now.
Yes.
And
You
getting
have
a
to.
Trey Murphy the third that is his age that can play alongside him and Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith and Nembhard, like you can keep them all together. Like that's a really, 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 really strong team for the next 4 or 5 years. So, I know everyone's going to get expensive, but it's like,
I just feel like you gotta make whatever move you're gonna make has to be this year. I think it would
yeah,
be a big mistake to, like, wait a year and then try to do that next year because there's the possibility that the ship's kind of sailed on this team and where then, like, McConnell's turning, like, 36 and you've now, like, started to see other guys, like, Siakam takes maybe you don't wanna say, like, a step back, but, like, half a step back, something where it's like, "Ooh, now you add to this team," and it's like you're trying to, like, bandage it up and keep it together, where I
mm,
feel like right now is you can make an argument to say, "Hey, maybe this team could get off to a tiny bit of a slower start, and maybe by doing it at the trade deadline, that's like that extra oomph that you really need to propel this team forward." But I think, like, the move has to happen this season, and
mm.
whenever that may be, I think it would be a mistake to not capitalize on this 2-year window as it looks right now.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me. And I don't want to like belabor the point. We can talk about more of this stuff later, but I mean, we did a whole entire like ranking Kevin Pritchard's worst draft picks and best draft picks, and it's like I think we probably said Matherin was number 2 for best, if not Furphy. But it's like Furphy's a single because like it's a 35th overall pick in the second round, and like is he ever going to be a starter?
Continued. You know, it's like we're talking about flashes because like look, say what it is. Edmund Sumner looked like a great pick at the time. You know,
For a second round pick, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like Sumner was someone who looked like he was starting to come into his own, but in the end, you know, no one like has a Sumner jersey in their closet, really. I mean, I'm sure someone listening to this probably does, but like, you know, it's not like it was like, yo, Edmund Sumner, man, I'll never forget X, Y, and Z year, whatever year, you know, that was really like, might be like 2018 or 2019 or something like that. But like, that's the limited sample size of like good picks that the Pacers have had. So I feel like we can't, as of right now, we can't count Jarris as a good pick. I mean, now
Shepard's a better pick than Jarris right now.
Yes, you're talking about the value of 7 or 8. You know, depending on what we're going to talk about.
We'll
with
just
the
say
trade.
8 because Ray was taken.
I know it's always so annoying doing that. It's like yes, whatever. It will call it 8 versus like 27 or whatever it was.
26, yep.
26. They're off by 1 on both, but like it was good value for Ben Shepherd in terms of the minutes that you got. And I'm sure if we look back at the draft, there's probably a bunch of players ahead of him that are out of the league or out of rotations and stuff. So like at that pick 26, it was good value.
Yeah, and what was Shep? A 4-year senior from Belmont.
Literally.
And he's got a low ceiling, but he's got a high floor.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like Furphy, he was a freshman. So it was kind of weird that he fell so far from like,
he could have been a late. He could have been.
Well, he was looked at as like a lottery pick at one point for the longest time. And then I'm just going back to Matherin. Like, this is the 6th overall pick. I mean, we really wanted Matherin at the time. We were like Jaden Ivey, Matherin, Keegan Murray. Like, that was our 3. Shaden Sharp was someone I was a little bit interested in, but like I was like, they're not going to take Sharp. He's too much of a red flag. So they're going to go with Matherin.
Really risky. Like I can't think of like more of a mystery box in the draft the last few years than Shaden Sharp. And he's good. He's good, but like it definitely was risky.
Yeah, and I think that was like just the beginning of like this new like NIL stuff and like what's happening and how the like college basketball is changing. But all I'm saying is, for as good as people think Matherin is, and like as much as I value Matherin as like a scorer, it still took him +2 first just to get a beat to Zubats. And you're talking about the 5th overall pick, the 6th overall pick, and then whatever 29 ends up being. And to me, it's like the Pacers were like, we got to get a center that bad that's going to be this good to help us. So it's like we've seen him recently, throw out 2 picks. They were going to throw 2031 in there if they didn't get this pick. So it's like, don't be afraid to go make another, ballsy move to go out there and add a legit 6th man to your team or even a starter and make Nesmith your 6th man. Like, I just don't understand the reason why they're so hesitant to do that. Like, I get believing in the core 7, but like, do what you can, like, to make this a better team.
I know. You got it. Just to quickly go through some names drafted ahead of Ben Shepherd. Marcus Sasser, Omax, your boy, who got cut at one point and, had to move on. Like Chris Murray, Dariq Whitehead, like no Clowney. Like these are guys that are like, Cam Whitmore. A lot of these guys, Jalen Hood-Schifino, a lot of these guys are not on teams or not on the original team that drafted them. So there's a lot of players that have, Jet Howard at number 11.
Let go.
Yeah, like these are players that are being let go.
He's
that were lottery picks. What was that?
Now, he's like a depth piece ad. If the Pacers were like, hey, we got Jet Howard, but like you're gonna get him on a minimum rookie, like not a minimum rookie, but like a minimum contract for his service in the league, which is really, really cheap, and make it like partially guaranteed so you can save some money. Like that sounds like a Pacers move to do, but like that's not a good winning move in my opinion. So I don't know. I'm getting frustrated, I think, a little bit inside just because I'm tired of hearing, oh, we're trying to win a championship, but we're trying to do it while saving money, or we're trying to do it without blowing anything up because we believe in this core. It's like, I get it, but like sometimes you got to have momentum going into a season. And I think they had a little bit of momentum coming off the Eastern Conference Finals run. Yes, they got off to a rough start, but they still had that momentum because they knew what they were capable of. Now there's a lot of question marks. How does Zoo fit? Can they stay healthy? What's the scoring off the bench going to look like? Can TJ hold up? Who's your backup 5? Do you trust Huff and Potter? Is Obi going to have to play the 5 a lot? Like, is that going to cause him to have more injuries? He's already had a foot injury last year. Like, Furphy, like, how valuable is he to the team? So, like, I'm throwing out all these questions because I think they're serious questions to ask.
They are actual questions. Like, the depth on this team, if one guy goes down, there's no depth. Like if something happened to Obi Toppin again, like you just mentioned, I am incredibly worried about a bench that is, McConnell, Shepard, Jarris, and
Potter
whoever.
enough.
Exactly, like Potter.
Right
Like,
now.
come on. That's not a good bench right there. So you do not feel confident in that. So they need someone who is proven that can play every single night instead of just someone who's just on the roster filling out a roster spot. So yeah, I left that clip, that conversation, hearing from Chad, like just not a little bit. I left discouraged. I left discouraged to say, oh man, this has just been a tough year. It's just been a tough year where it just keeps going on, and this free agency class it hasn't even started yet, and it's
Yeah.
drying up. It's drying up quick.
I wouldn't say it's drying up quick, just because I feel like there's still a lot of moves. But I will say, like,
It'll dry up in the first 10 minutes because there's a couple guys that we mentioned like quickly never even hit free agency.
Free agency is going to be bad, but I think there could be trades. And I will just say, the one thing that Chad did tell JMV when he was on his radio interview with him after he did the presser, he said that we're going to look at players we can acquire via free agency or trade. So
Pacer way.
Yeah, so don't rule out them making a trade for somebody, and we're going to come up with some names for the next episode. But yeah, all right, the Atlanta Hawks will fully guarantee Buddy Hield's contract. It looks like so
interesting. There is some deadline decisions coming up. June 29th, when you're going to be listening to this episode, is definitely where there's quite a few decisions that teams have to make.
Yeah. All right, Facci. Well, we've probably gone about 40 minutes long on this one, but we were mostly me just ranting about stuff. So hopefully you guys feel our passion as well, because we just want to see this team get back to the championship, the NBA Finals, and actually hoist the championship this time instead of being left at the altar in Game 7. So just really want to see this team get back, and I trust the front office. I feel like they earned my trust.
I agree
with all the trades they've made, even though I am a little bit worried about like the wording that they're using. And hopefully it's very similar to when Carlisle said, yeah, we're not going to make any trades at the deadline. And then they get Zubats. So maybe it's more so just like trying to stay face. And I also do wonder, just real quick, how much teams are not wanting to trade with the Pacers like they had previously because of how well they've done.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said for a while, like the Pacers have pretty much won like all of these deals. This Zubats one is the one that could be, it's definitely up for debate until we got to wait a few years to see, because like, Keaton Wagner at pick 5, like who knows how he'll turn out. The 2029 first, no one knows how that what pick that could be. I mean, one last thing, I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole, but like,
yeah,
do you remember when the Lakers had those 2 unprotected picks, and those were being looked at as like the gold of the gold? Like that was true. Oh my God. Like the Lakers at this point, it's probably the Lakers 2027 or 2026, first or whatever it may have been. I remember they were even rumored to go after Turner at the time for those. The Lakers are still a solid team. So those picks, because everybody thought LeBron would be done by then, he's still playing, and the Lakers are still competitive, and those picks were not good. So you never know what a pick's going to be years from now, especially if there's still like actual good talent on that roster. So
yeah, and we know the Pacers are a team that will not try to lose games on purpose. Like they did it last year, and what did it do?
It did not work out.
It didn't work out. So you think that Herb Simon's going to be like, yeah, let's do that again?
I think that's a lesson learned. Like if they
will not do that.
Something like that, maybe that could be something to say, hey, it worked out once. It worked out terribly, honestly. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to try that anytime soon.
Alrighty, Pacer Nation, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode here of Setting the Pace, your go-to Pacers podcast. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review if you haven't already, and let us know what you think in the comments section on YouTube about this conversation, and throw out some of your ideas and what you're feeling about the comments that Chad Buchanan has made about this team. But Facci, if you're hoping the Pacers kind of prove us wrong and make a little bit of a bigger swing than we're thinking, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go Pacers.